Welcome back after the break. And thank you, Ms. Boyd, for the cross-examination. We'll now ask lead counsel who's next on the cross-examination list.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. Next, we call in Victor Ryan, Counsel for Government of Canada.
Victor Ryan the council and then the Canada, Government of Canada.
Good afternoon. I had a number of questions for Dr. Barter, but the benefit of going after my friend, counsel for the province, is that she has capably canvassed those topics, and so Government of Canada has no questions for Dr. Barter. Thank you.
And this 이번에는 시작한 그쯤에 보는데 자한단테 다운단테 그때근데 나가 그쯤에 노시야 저한테 해지가 안 쓰여나 제가 그쯤에 보는 것도 자하나 진시한테 나 그때가 노시가 안 문제 막에한테 제 못고노 전적인데.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ryan. Continue, please, Caitlin.
So that would be all of our parties withstanding. So it'd be over to you, Commissioners.
Cheers. Thank you. I'll ask Commissioner Devine whether he'd like to have any comments or closing remarks on the witness's presentation. Please go ahead, sir.
Well, first of all, I'm happy to be able to say hi, Ken. It's good to see you again. If it's at least only virtually, maybe next time will be in person. So it's been a while.
It has been a while. Nice to see you, Mike.
You too. You too. I guess the first thing I wanted to say was that we are in the midst of a snowstorm today, and I'm sure that where you're to, there's probably not much snow, at least from where you're located in Victoria.
In Victoria, yes. Yeah.
Victoria. Not much snow.
Just a few rain showers today.
Oh, okay. Anyway, my two fellow commissioners, they're hardy Labradorians, so they went into the hearings room this morning, and but I stayed put, so I'm at home doing it virtually also.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I wanted to say was that yes, when I spoke this morning, did a brief introduction. I'm not sure if you're online or not, but I remember it as being Bonavista. But of course, I think that was because I think you had been there at some point, and I was too. So
yes, that's right. Yeah,
yeah. So anyway, a lot of very interesting points today. And we could talk for hours, I guess, to have a discussion about many of them, but that's not my role here today. I will do some possibly reflections or comments, and got a couple of questions. Again, as the Council for Government of Canada said, there were some questions that I had, but they've been covered at least to a fair extent.
Let's pause for the cause, please, Commissioner.
I even have a note here to stop for translation. So I'm a long time at it. I should know better.
Nympho's laughing.
And I talked to best. Go ahead.
And on this Caitlin, I mean, as and I beg when what's my commissioner and go back. 그때 이제 안 제국가 좀 맞제고 안다그노 아이고 애한테 했으면 또 힘은 진짜 애한테 내 해운 앞면 단데 아이고 민화도 보도 앞면 단데 차 보단데 저 제주 이득마다 제주 이득도 제주 민도 차 마치 저도 되니 나인데 막근데 마치인데다 제주는 건데 한다 근데 빅토리아 50는 앞보인 a canon napio te we na chumuni beno de abjente mak ante se manchinte ni to heniu tante machi signa mak tante se enwe chejitos etente vijitos se wina tente he which washa ego gente tante he ka wi sa ha tente se panfesta tente he wish kata se he beutia sitten ante hecho de gatos secha magnante hecho ante no ante hecho no wa kuchumuta sa no sechi kuchumuna no ante chegua chechi with magta sa no ante hechi no man hechi an much na ka tente ja no ante hechi na si ho jente mag chechi to seni hasente en con no te chechi kuchumada na sechi kwa gewina.
Okay. First thing I just want to touch upon is the whole notion that you talked about with regard to resourcing programs and services, particularly in child welfare, and you presented and referred to a number of documents in terms of the problems that has been. And comment for me is that it doesn't matter what kind of a child protection system or what legislation we have. If there's not adequate resourcing, then it's not going to work very well at best. And I think certainly to speak, from a historical perspective, if you like, that I believe also that has been the case. And not just in this province, but I think other provinces, were similar in that regard. So I'll just pause here.
Maganda gente buenante na kawa wit man tugon dente shewin cha warfare mit masha nante he kai ta chin chiga se hicha magdente he mishnan ga nante he echi hi ta gan jiniwa chojmang mushan ga nante he kai funjen che gan gan na fini ban je mun ponja magano kamen no bun jina che gwa apne dishna nia engune nante he es na kwa hin to kwa nante he ka nante benedicina da musna no church moja.
I was also reminded of, in the past, some of the approaches that had been, put forward or implemented to some extent in the child protection system. I'll pause there.
Deze we budget dan deze hebben ze nog te kan funja. Dan deze gabe dus nog een was ze ze tot wagen sa ze gaan zo iets zeggen zo. Ik dan deze hebben ze te goed sa.
And in the past, there have been, models that have been developed. Like if you remember the family group decision-making project that Gail Burford and Joan Pennell had implemented, that seemed to work well, but it did require additional resources, and in that regard, I'm not sure how much or if it's even used today.
Marketing is dan deze kau si sagen sind to kom snan gan jen se ka we hagen den te hen swi sagen since we han se mo to ni benen to na en on te se meta gan den to go je gan se to no to no to se na ma gan den te se hen te je ji men na pon chin win te sa no te se gan ka win sna go hagen den te e go men se ha bi te e khwana abji hagen e khwana je abji hagen je no ka wisita cheno mishina no en on te he chika nishina wanneer nou gaat zijn zoiets eigenlijk.
Well, just pause there, and if there's any comments you have to make and anything you want to say, then now is the time. And if not, I'll move on.
Yeah, there have been, well, resources have always been an issue. What is bothersome is when government, in its wisdom, decided to delegate the responsibility for child welfare to the regional health boards, they did so knowing full well that the system that they were passing to them was a system that was fraught with many difficulties and problems. But government did not be upfront with what those issues and problems were. And when they were clarifying the roles, they passed the service on to the health boards, and then the government was basically responsible for policy planning and evaluation. And then they looked to the health boards to get outcomes that government itself couldn't get because it never had the resources. So that's where this whole issue of trust and confidence comes in, is where is the government going, or when is the government going to make children, vulnerable children particularly, and Indigenous children, when are they going to make the children a priority? And that doesn't seem to come through in any of the documents. There's rhetoric about it, and there's this and that, but it really doesn't come through. And when I see protocols and agreements being signed, and yes, it's all good and what have you, but you don't necessarily see the follow-up with what additional resources are attached to those agreements and to those protocols. And finally, the big question is, when those protocols and agreements are being made, who has the decision-making power? And I would say that decision-making power stays with the Newfoundland government, not necessarily with the Indigenous populations. And the power is not shared. And that's a big issue.
Translation.
And then this happens to go kan syötä tante se siinä funnet on te en on te se sen ihan tante se mutta kun on teuinen on en se kato se että se jita se jita kagnsa se jita katta sen on tuna en kun muistaa väisnä kun sinä chan tante se kai tatsen juin jita tot move den on takanwa en kun en kamen punsin tante se en win Children hindi antente he että se on wassa antente he antente he ni antente he win regional board ni he tuma antente he misan kun javnu antente he että ei una vitastana tsakan funna en kun antente he ei annan panjab jnia tante mutta kun tatsekon ni tsakan tuotu mun teona churchma misma en muistan gaji tante he niin fattu mun tante health board tante he tewa ei tante he seni hasa tai tahtna jinwa ei jin to seni tagna cha mak mutta kun on tante he teona ei tante ku ya bis mutta ku ya na bis ni na resources in ska to se cha jita cha mak na he mutta kun ni chan tante he trust ajeji spihen ita gusta spihen maganda he jejito ta heno at se uno ya ego tante wasajin jen kon jeji kaji ta magni benchnis mente anchen no wasajin te magan tante he mishan gna abjo hi ta kan jin ya ta bo ya abjo ya gno ji 지위노 쇼한테나 치우지마. 먹고 아버지는 건 애신하고 하시니 못도는 아버지는 요 제지에 또 지다 바스근 지니와 follow up는 시야도마. 마그나한테 했다는 아직 안 푸니브냐. 에고 단데 오웨노 에야든데 decision non te oweno in eyatnte eyat nochia hantewa enwante he tsukan siho na chegwa no chense to tunjia enweno te enwa chojma wente onte Newfoundland na club donte winwa no eya ochinte no chimu chinte enkwetante eyatnte no te matano na katakante chaweno tsukai tsakaya kwa tsakawi chino ko cha non te he che chin te ma chen wan cha kwa wi na non mo kwa che o ma hente new cha con we sho wet sho sa kan chin ya en wan te se ya we shi ta chin mo shan kan che o ma wi na non te se me shwe ya wa na si ho cha kan ma ta te ka ko ya
So the other thing I wanted to talk about briefly was prevention services and the whole concept of prevention. And very much is very much interested in inquiry, but also the notion of trauma, intergenerational trauma from forced settlement and so on. And yesterday we had somebody who presented their research on trauma. And I'll repeat what I said yesterday, is that in terms of prevention, is that I never really understood why prevention didn't get implemented in a comprehensive way within government. Because to me, it's like obvious that it should have been. It would prevent harm to children and, been involved in these systems. And the way that I've talked about is in terms of primary prevention, secondary and tertiary. And, it's the tertiary, of course, when children are in imminent danger of coming into care, and it's obviously a priority. But the others are also, so it's not just, one or the other. There is strides being made by the INU regard to their prevention services, and certainly at this point in time seems to be working very well. I'll pause for translation. Sorry, Nympha.
Magdante heniwa nui enote he kawa itakan sinyana prevention na tante he tatakhata sentente he vinoa anjino chenta enante he esnesto ta hena kevina entente he es tuta seno ya bja anjaga tasech enante he kamisto itakan ante no enante he trauma we ya je mes ne futu ji je no ta magdante he kayatna kawa wita hana no Otawi shika no me ta nguna no kawa wita he no trauma je ban trauma ta tan den de we shibanja eguna na te she f was mo ta ta he no no juana de kawa wita menji me shoga no men sto haben te shoga no te she je ban te she f ne je no no te she che ji be wa ya be je kan na was je ban no eguna na te she te Magdante she no jab wetness se no jejino attakhata se no prevention ka to nisbia dente chantente she be mijmauza ya ta bano nist knesh no ji muja ego no te she no sho jeji be ba kan fant we engo no te she takhane hata no jente ego te she no switch men no puno ya bja no ja.
And just one more point, and I'll ask for that comment you have. Because we talk about protection and it has certain connotations around it, right? Like to me, it's a negative connotation. Whereas, and you've talked about this, I've heard you a number of times speak of concepts like child care, child well-being, child and family centered services. So it's a really different kind of focus than child protection, which is, going out when children are in immediate danger. So pause for translation, then if any comments that you have.
Kauita nante no 제니사그더니 간시도드그나 제지나그든 마근도 왔어. 미션한테 해줘가 아시다 지한테 차한테 근데 해 왔을 때 센터 마근한테 해줘 간시 위자근한테 해줘 간시 todo agne 왔어. 야 사바나니스는 시나간 유난테 해시 분분인데나 다는 내노니스는 시도다사 안단데 제 NOS 회치위노 안텐데시니스타 주미아자그노와사 뭐고야 사바노는 시분분온테오나한테시 간시 도다스 간시 니스트 분분이하자
Comments from you on that point?
You're right. It's difficult to understand why government has not made prevention a bigger priority and a part of the whole spectrum within the child welfare field. But you got to remember, when the Child, Youth and Family Services Act was replaced by the Child Youth Care Protection Act, the minister of the day responsible for that, the Joan Burke in the Williams government, she was quoted in the Telegram as saying prevention doesn't work. So you got to bear in mind that kind of thinking at a very powerful level, the political level, the leadership level, and is that kind of thinking that's probably underpins why prevention hasn't been given the priority that it needs to be. The thing with protection, it's got a negative connotation. You're right, but that depends on what kind of protection. And we've got the negative connotation that children need protection primarily from their parents, because we're very much into the parent blaming. But they also need protection from the biggest perpetrator of maltreatment towards them is society in general. And, so again, when you look at issues like poverty and violence and some of those structural inequalities, then children need protection from that as well. It's not just they need assistance along with their parents to deal with it. And unfortunately, you're right. We've got a negative connotation, and the challenge is to shift that and turn it around into a more positive. Protecting children's rights sounds better than protecting children from parents. So, protecting children's health care needs, protecting their educational needs, and so on, then, we need to use protection in a more positive light, for sure.
Then I'll
Entonces ante prevention entonces was Child Welfare Act mi shepni anto kuena cheguanista entonces cheguan entonces kan shwe dagni entonces was enante he taun tante he teuna pegna which monji John Burke ni ha te mishna na no pa ma te chan tante he si ho mamno punun prevention si ante enante he chi atakhat na cha egonum enante he te cha enante he kamen punun si ante he chi ta ba mo shi na cheguanante he te cha cheguanante he kan shwi che wasa enante cheguanante kam sta no mishna na chegan she tot mo cha chechi man ponche no an she tot kan cha mak enante he win te cha kat kunani na cheguante cha andante he chechi Anante jeji na kana kan na be chekwa jeji kana fin chwasa jama kan ante je ka jeji no jihato nanjin te ego tantante he wina no chata ba hante no chio jama ante je chekwa ego meona china meona na wina no jinda mutokon no anante tante he chekana je todo mu bunte ante je chekan mau chekana je na guni buntuka wasa jeji na to magna chintugo meona no magna jeji wi jagna chinchum kwamo chintugo magna wasa jeji na to bagna chino je khutma hote abja ante he chekwa no ante he menon chia ego tante he cheka tukuni bini ni tante he jeji no gna chia meona ante he win ante he chewj masha ya sabe no ni jita ba hama and wasa chika men bunu chuna ba hasin de he kame no ja do no ja ma ga no de chika tante he protection no nishna go hante matta tuma no de no prevention no he tuma and de he chika nish na ga ba han even je nish wi ja gan to ya to wasa ja tante mattu kan ni no de he no chika no nas sp de ni ha no jetto
So I have two questions and I'm done. Yeah. And the first question has to do with retention of social workers in northern communities. With the INU right now, they have a program that there are 10 students enrolled in. The program is out of BC, I forget the name. And they've just completed their first year. Now they're into their second year. It's done remotely. So eventually that's building the capacity, of course, in these communities. I'll pause now, let Nifa.
Magandante gente mijmijmauja. Tagonante panonte ni da khad ma han no ji no ni pego no da se was gente wet nasente na no dente se vino o dente se no je dente he wish minag no gente no je ji khad ma gente bc ego cha pego ji khad ma ho gente ji sa je no pego no first year no jo go punwa ni se punana no ji no
So currently the model, as you're probably aware, is a fly-in, fly-out for those who don't live in the communities. And but in the meantime, that model will have to stay in place, or some kind of a model for non-INU social workers in the community. Do you have any thoughts or experiences with regard to how to, I guess, increase retention? Because there's often a fair turnover of social workers in northern communities.
Translation?
Tente he gente chante mijimijima gente cha ya chiuchi beno gente mag mishika gente tente he bwa je ji ta chinju no ta ta wen je no chan je ka mijimijima to ya magano te she de mijimijima no te she efne cha tente he vino mishika tsket minat ni je beno cha tante he kamen sta kamen puncha West Tabbins.
Well, certainly recruitment and retention to work in remote northern communities has been an ongoing challenge. One method of doing that, or one method of dealing with it, of course, is to recruit from within and to educate from within and put the resources in place so that recruitment and education can take place. So it's kind of like developing your own skills within your own communities and so on and so forth. That to me would be the way to go, and to partner with universities or what have you across the country if necessary, to be able to do that. And if you're going to be doing that, then do it in a way, the education of what's required in small communities to work with families and children, the education curriculum to do that is not necessarily the social work curriculum that we're used to. It's it's got some different components to it and different qualifications attached to it as well. And we need to be a little bit more flexible in that. And of course, you know, with INU authority and INU control, that flexibility can in fact exist. So yeah, you build in the resources that's required for sure, and in order to deal with that recruitment. And the fly-in model and the fly-out model, well, you know, there's always probably room for consultation and supervision, and with all of the technologies these days, that can be an asset as well, for sure. I mean, they're doing it for medicine now. You can get a diagnosis virtually within seconds when you're dealing with AI doctors. So yeah, so there are ways and means about it, but it is an ongoing issue. And the other thing, when it comes to working with children and families, yes, social work is a very important profession, important part of it. But I mean, you need other skills too that are very important. You need youth worker skills. You need community development skills. You need relationship skills. And in my career, some of the best social work that I've seen done has been done by foster parents, has been done by relatives, aunts, uncles. It's been done by teachers and youth workers. That's some of the best social work that I've seen done. They don't have social work degrees. It's that relationship, eh? That's so critical. That's so critical.
The translation, thank you.
Dante he new chante esna kahta when you chante mes misgat sama que no te she an many thakun new chante te she win den te she den tegen ti ha northern communities and den te he utena an many thakun in te no te she eno jeji misgat twenty jeji touch magan jeji khut mai hocha magan jigat anju apichka to se cha jeji nishetu ta sino te she en man te she wino den te she kahut mai hocha jeji en man te jeji ta sino te she chigan shetu mo wino en man te she chigano chiga tu chen shwi chino cha en kun chigan sha kun ibn new chan den te jeji ta chen te on te she ni sha ante pego sa no te she ka men no punna chen no te she mish ga ji ma ke no an chmi chmi ma cha en kun en on te she chiga en kun chen na finch new chan dan te she ji ya ba khut ma ho chen ja ba ji khut ma ho ne ba ji khut ma han ji to kun en kun ya ba ji to ka ni wa en kun den te he chen shui ja ga na chen cha o te na shin den no cha an en ona pa se ya shi pa no non pa se ni wa en an te he che kwa gan sha chen sha e ka ni shi to tung ji ma ga na che kwa no non te he che ab ji ha to ya te ji ni shi khut ma ho ta non te he che kwa je ni shi to ta je ni shi ta khat to de no je no wi no cha je ji ut na se non te je no wan shi na go ha cha wi no je ji na si ha cha Magana ka chegwa ni chanta tabuyan chukui se na de weje ji mishigata de ji an many tagana ni chamak to kwan chi ni shna gwana ni chana de win owe eto hagen ji aji to agno ya bichinte de ji ayan macha en de chegwa ji jab ji ha cha Euten hevi no is to das percent na an 20 na eto section de euten da we to section dan de kam de himis bod na de jino go section dan de kokuna gno ja jin suhe chegwa ma kan cha an to was 20 wasan mi jma then they have 20 commissioner ji no ni ji wi church and mi jma ja na wa wi ja chen na wen Chukui tawe wen te na te he chukui to kuna new chana we no jesin ma de na ano te he no kwa mo sa mo ma ke no wasa ma ke no te win chi ka se hu jen chi wi ja da ta u chen chi wen jin de na te he jesin ni ha sin de jam chi ka jin ja ba ja a ba jo na ka no na ka mi shit no ni Mr. Gachma ja vi ja e ku da da ja he no te tu mo jen no te no jesin ni mo jen chi ka ni shi to na te no e no no como sama ma kan che e chen de e no an che na ga to me ji wa sa na fast parents and on the cha ka khot ma ji ja bin de na je wen jen ja ba je sen ha sin na kan shi jo kan shi je wa chen de an chen no ja en ko ne shin man in new e jo ba man new ga je sen ta hu ya en on de je shi ja de na nan bin ji wa这个鸡呢，不就那的那干弄那，这鸡没得活嘛，晓得，咋还弄得的么的那，生意嘛那嘛个得的么，这个是那鸡么的，这个是娃为鸡么的，为是娃为这样的，俺这个都是很深圳的，我的就我也的。
So the last question I have is a question that you can't answer. So I'm just going to tell you that up front. Because this one has been, I guess, haunting many of us in the profession for decades. And that has to do with new social workers who come out, is that they usually, many of them end up in child protection as their first job. And I've always found that to be problematic. Now, sometimes in practice, I've seen new social workers come out and they've been like fireflies, like they just go, they have it. And, not only in professional training, but I think kind of an intuitive almost way. But my own bias is that I think that, in a perfect kind of environment, that social workers should have at least 5 years experience, for example, before they go into child protection. And that hasn't changed, the way it is. So just any thoughts you might have on if there's any hope of that ever changing. Translation first.
Magnante enante wakuchima da jana jesse hente chanda de hechekwa dante wakuchima de na chekwa dente shewine wemes to khut me hoda we bejana nishna kan new enante she ya bijimima dente hechekwa to se van dente hem khwet me hoda mo chigat no chingma nonte he wata to seuna kana shna kunane enante she chika mano chika tibende no我那位今天唱这个好像是这几米么的，我喜欢的这，回到那天没得动的那结果那这个这几活的嘛好的那，我这干的是都塞不那，嘛个那这些分的，等你很的这不得他不那这个记不得的动的那，这几生意还那真是多大好的都塞那，换没有你那。me ya one ne khunyo e ya jeji mi khotban chini wa e khun shina kunyo em kunan eto sin ha eto sin man jeji ya mi khotban ga
We hope that changing. You're right. That's where many social workers, shortly after graduation, they end up in doing child protection work because that's where the vacancies are. Yet we talked earlier today with someone about how complex child protection work is, how it's so interconnected in every aspect of political, social, economic, whatever, very complex. It's so complex that what should be is your most experienced, your most educated, your most mature, your most skilled workers. That's where they should be, into that complex field. And it could be that way if the system were amenable to bringing about that change. But I've known many social workers over the years, myself included, who love the frontline protection work, but the only way to advance into supervisor or management positions is you move away from the field, and that gives you a higher salary and so on. So the system would need to change to support the experience and skills to stay on the front line and be compensated as well for that. So it can change if the system agreed to change. And I think there's a burden of responsibility here as well for the profession of social work and the professional association to perhaps do a little stronger advocacy to bring about that kind of change on behalf of its members. And again, my experience has been it's people in that field. It's not for everybody, but there are many who want to work in that field. And they're there because they enjoy the work. But they're moving out of it because of the bureaucracies that they're working in. And that's got to change as well in order to have the skill set compatible with the complexity of the work.
Thank you for that translation.
Dantihin syhna ei kenna en ota he syhtä kevin sana chegua kevin dantihe effentia dantihe winua wassa chignagten magnocha dantihe en mushnanagna no chojma dantihe esnagu hat kevina anjenje he ka khut mai ho chente cha ja tawinto ka ji khut mai ho tawinto Kuetenteni pisachentente ontente je kaet kuna jita se ononte me ontente he tsakasho chimgani ban jishwa niu chan uenda seni ta handante he tata kwente chan onte jen jwicha donwa enote to se on mak enote je chkwita wente ona we enote je jesen madena ona jakan jwichi nueva jakan shetot bueno de to se ona Engudanante he abachme eachniu westabachniu tapuet tukun tapuet niu no te he shokot ma hocha moko matukun no te he chejisani hasin te he vino achikan shito seoja tente he et he tawin tante he ona bata he kai tanchi no jet senja chikajin eapniu mi khochbni bniu cha eno te he chegwanwa Engun geni nesna niwa dente to seta dente je kana dente he mit mas gato seta dente je win jeju tsma dente he de we tsma dente he mit mas magdante he eto to seche no ante je te no abs mit enona mit ma ko jan dente we shwe vita ga khaja fisha Nangut ni abis niu cha chikuin tente hen ka hen niu mi chum chuma niu cha yang guten wi ne so ka tente she queste he che ji to seta ma ka chikuin abis che ji Ja mitsma we jagna since when she have since God says and on te se mana mo ko niu sa na matia se pano niu and on te gente cheo mano in what at the shoeta and no is mo sina na kana and go dan go ni je se no chim ka niu sa dan te se kui down ta we te and on te se e go dan te we si ya putsin te me sho ka no puni no ko chen te na te ka to se he chen te sa je jin da to he chen te psen te kui sho chiu ja na te se no ja ha na je ko no je ji to set and then the HG we just se ma che no ga ta ka no me shwe na te gente ta ka ni cha me je ji na me shwe we ji ni na foto mo den HG to set a je ji no man no ni ta ha no te he en to set a tante tente he me shna na ga na ni cha tente he chkuin mi khu che no ni tente he cho ma mo shna na ga na je ji shna ba no once chkan de shna go ni pin ni and then the shame meets mesh.
Okay, well, that's all from me, but just in close, I want to say thank you, Ken, for your report. It certainly gives us a good timeline in a comprehensive way of all the various things that have happened and how the system has changed in structures and all those over the years. And so in a very concise way. So to have all of that together in that manner, I'm sure will be very helpful to us. So thank you again. Appreciate it. And hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Mike, and the commissioners. Thank you very much for your service in this important work. Appreciate it. That it?
Tunakumat nan tago anante he ka jibe to he anante he e shwitha ha na joka ka e shimkha he na ka witha ha magenante she chum no puno botn to go dante she khunte anante she mo joka ka na funjia mag jeji mamu no kan she kaya kan she to ta na mashana na na guna bu na khmat n to wa magni de chna khmat n to ka ji Kaji bebai at kwech muta. Munay hente kaji noa kwech madino chibana. Want to sing.
Thank you very much. And I'll now ask Commissioner Nastash Kubi, please.
Thank you, Ken, for your time this afternoon, for today. And I have no questions. Thank you.
Matogona jenta Nastash.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barter. And I hope we have not taxed you too hard, you and Nympha, you for your health and Nympha for her mental health. It's been a hard 3 days as far as having to do all this interpretation. And I understand that you have your own challenges, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Basta takhatir no de stukanisha. Maganda de hekante esha shui matjana. Sto jishika an may haven to
I want to thank the witnesses who attended all this week. We've had this formal hearing has shown us that researchers, scholars, and experts in the field are extremely valuable for the work we do and the report we're going to produce.
Magano te he sin khumtnan te no katagana pitsa tinja kanto has magan chiganta kanando se muji jagana and magan chigamas se muji na jagwa magana kayach eno mishana kama muna sad eno te magana chigataji chechi no te he seni gana cha gwiji no guna eno te no te she kana to soja.
These witnesses, because they're experts, have a perspective, but we also rely on counsel for the parties to balance that perspective, and we're grateful that we have had their input as well.
Magan sinternan na kamay sinternan te she kapins futan te hen mr same machina but you can te chang when the jabajen na kamay sinter magan na counsel and when the jabajen na kamay sinter da he ka chita sinter mis na khuna ni chan no te he esh bedes magan chagwa no jeji seni hasa and te he shwiji no chana je same ji chagwa no manamo no maji mishan ga.
After 3.5 years, the inquiry is getting a real sense that we're winding down. We still have reports to come in. We still have confirmation hearings and formal hearings to do, but we feel confident that we'll be able to meet our deadline, especially with the quality of the input and the quality of the witnesses we have seen.
Magan stapna magwo ji na sino ji hanyu anon te inquiry kama mo no machino na tapajumuna magan te she tu ish no ji hasa na nash med no puno ja hanyu anon te she utatu se no magan te she abich jeji na to enje na to hoji se abich wenjin te na penetration se no tapajumuna magan te she Magana mishwelanda she F na chi jagwa chana jaga chimpanwania. Magana te she sh na to hasen te she enante she kaya gna kan she wawi to magana cha. Chana abjimet na bunanyo. Magana shwiji na shwiji gna chana abjangna abj nekhmuta.
Our lead counsel has already had one child since the inquiry started, and we want to end before that number gets up to 6. So in conclusion, we want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you for all the work that you've put in on our behalf.
Nakomod na mishwen te nante she esi wijina hinde magana mishwe chagwante chana kan she bedes magan she she khot magan chabja magana te she chahe pe kunte na ena kwa ante te wijina wuji chamina chugo to asmshen de pe kusna to asman de mina chu to asmshen.
I'll ask Elder Nymphaburn to close our week session with a prayer.
Jamie sahan minacha mastia. Punanja anante she mistwi mist khotmago sha mist khotmago smagm she bet ma hen sionja. Egon khamaji she mainto denante she utai sa tu muhan isteta nagatapmto. Ego jenis kumagastomani minaja. Mani istata muskatni shagasniska kuina miumnasio anjishamainto jishim gasneta hitisko jagujilam jishitoin dagushin gejishitoin dagusojus Stomani din chemandon gaugusistu de mitonan gigabasta idea cheni beach emitonan chimage. Amen.
Thank you.